right, welcome. Today is Tuesday, September 10th. We're thankful for this meeting of our bicycle retailer focused e-bike safety and standards panel. This is a quarterly platform that provides a chance for industry experts to meet and discuss retailer risks, concern, and best practices regarding lithium-ion batteries and e-mobility devices, safety standards, and compliance. The NBDA appreciates the panel members who have volunteered their time and expertise to these continuing discussions. Tremendous energy has gone into making this platform a resource, not just for retailers, but the industry at large. We truly believe that working united, this collective conversation will propel us towards continuous growth in e-bike sales and participation, limiting the risk and increasing safety for all. Panel members, thank you for being here today. If you're joining as an attendee, we welcome your participation throughout today's event by placing questions in the chat or the question function. Throughout the event, the panel members and the National Bicycle Dealers Association will monitor this, and some questions may be answered live, while others will be addressed back in the chat function. Co-moderating today's event with me is industry expert, Mr. Jay Townley from Human Powered Solutions. Jay?
Thank you, Heather, and welcome to all of the panelists and also all of the attendees. As we've said at each of the openings of these sessions, the purpose of the Bicycle Industry E-Bike Safety and Standards Panel is to create a safe and positive environment for our industry to become proactive relative to the situation and to give us an opportunity that has been created by the growth of micromobility, continued growth, and the use of lithium-ion batteries for powering propulsion systems, and to review and update proposed action items every quarter. This is, as we all know, a dynamic, evolving micromobility industry. The format, which is open to suggestions and change, and please, if you've got suggestions about change, let Heather know, is constructed so everyone who wishes will be given the opportunity to share thoughts, ideas, and suggestions within the allocated time specified by the moderator for each question. Now, this is to be done without interruption, as we have done in past sessions. Then everyone else is asked to listen in a respectful and non-judgmental way with no negative reactions, please. Also, direct all comments directly to the questions or the issue, not to the comments made by the other participants. All discussions will be summarized, and proactive and constructive action items may be proposed, and those will be listed as we get into the summaries. The panel session will also be recorded, and participants and listeners can review the questions, the discussions, the suggestions, and the summary, and the resulting proposed proactive and constructive action items. Thank you. Back to you, Heather.
Thank you, Jay. Yeah, Jay's correct. This is an opportunity for us all to share and learn from one another. This past weekend, an NBDA retailer member located in New Hampshire had an incident at his store, which resulted in, unfortunately, loss of product and possible implications with his insurance in the future. We don't want to see our retailers, impacted like this. We want to continue to see the growth of e-bikes, e-mobility products within our industry. Today's conversation is important, and I urge you to listen and re-listen if need be. The 4 topics for exploration today have been submitted to us from retailers and from the industry at large. The panel members have helped us in selecting the topics. How the forum will progress today is I will read the topic question. Our panel members who have volunteered to speak on the items will talk, and then anyone else in attendance who'd like to chime in on the subject will have a chance as well. If our attendees would like to ask questions to the panel members or ask questions at large, you can use chat, and if there's time, we'll address those as well. With that, let's proceed. We have an opening special topic on DOT inspections, battery safety insights. This is feedback from a retailer following a DOT inspection on battery safety requirements and what was learned. I'd like to turn it over to Karen Weiner from the New Wheel. Hi, Karen, how are you?
I'm great. Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me. Let me just see about sharing my screen here. I'm sorry. got a settings issue. Should just take 1 second.
Great to have you today. Nice to see you.
I'm so sorry. I am totally party fouling this. I'll be right back.
Okay, looks like she's going to chime in on another device, which is great. We're happy to have her here. So the New Wheel is an e-mobility retailer located in San Francisco, California. I know that they have several locations and have been working with the government officials and municipalities in their area on safety concerns and regulations. So we're interested to see what Corinne has to share with us today.
All right. So thank you for your patience there. About a year ago, I was at work, as I tend to be, and I got a message from a manager that let me know that the DOT inspector was in our warehouse and wanted to inspect our premises. And for a little bit of context, the New Wheel, while we do have quite a bit of kind of visibility online in terms of just our role in the industry and being a significant e-bike dealer, we don't sell very many bikes online. In fact, we don't sell any online. And from a shipping perspective, I'd say we ship less than 50 bikes per year. So we weren't identified as a key inspectee for any kind of volume issue reason. And the reason I mention this is just that, just FYI, anybody can be inspected. And I still don't know how they decided that we were the best people to inspect. But I learned a lot. It was a little bit stressful. And I am excited to share the information with you all. The inspector spent a good half day with me. I put 3+ hours, but I think it was a little bit more than that. And we had a lot of back and forth in the days before and after the actual physical process. One point that became clear to me is that there are several areas of jurisdiction around batteries in our bike shops. So local fire oversees on-site battery storage and charging protocols. OSHA oversees worker safety and MSDS sheets. And the Department of Transportation oversees the transportation safety and UN test sheets, which is something that I'll be talking about more in just a minute. The most surprising thing about all of this was that I was less well prepared than I thought I was. I like to be fairly well ready, and we have always been focused on electric bikes. So the thing that was most surprising to me was that there's a thing called the UN 38.3 test sheet that I didn't know about until the inspector showed up, that we and all retailers and distributors of lithium-ion products with lithium-ion batteries are required to have on hand. So retailers are required to have MSDS sheets on hand for anything that has a toxic quality or can combust or anything like that. I think a lot of us are aware of that. UN 38.3 test sheets, outgoing bills of lading, special shipping permits, for example, for call to recycle, and staff training logs. As I understand from the DOT, a big part of the reason that they're doing this inspection round is because of new rules set forth in January of 2022, which established the need for these UN 38.3 test sheets. And so what they are their testing requirements for manufacturers to basically provide test results in a standardized format. And one of the things that was good and helpful was that as I sort of hustled to figure out what all of this meant, and what to do about it. When I reached out to my suppliers, many of them were able to provide me with these, actually all of them were able to provide me with these test sheets very quickly. So it was clear that this was something that was known about in the manufacturing circles, but it hadn't yet come to our attention. One important thing, the DOT considers retailers as distributors, even if you aren't shipping things anywhere. And so anything that is required for a distributor would also be required for a retailer. A few of the learnings along the way were that general staff training on battery safety is required. So all staff must be trained on battery handling. And I put together, or I provided here just an example outline of the types of topics that we talk about here at the New Wheel. And maybe that'll be helpful to some of you, but being very clear with your staff and having consistency across the board around, what you work on, how you handle battery systems that are not sold by your company, how you intake batteries for recycling, how you transport batteries, how you respond to an emergency, and what we are able to ship to customers. There is also role-specific training. For example, for anyone who is recycling batteries, they need to be trained by Call to Recycle. And it's important to have a organized training log and training certificates available for inspection. Employees also must be trained in shipping if they are packaging and shipping bikes outbound. Documentation and record keeping is key here. So internally now we annually audit our MSDS sheets and our 38.3 sheets so that we know that we have documentation for everything that we sell. Unfortunately, currently suppliers do not make these documents easily available. Changes in this area would be really helpful. If you buy something from, a major distributor or from anyone, we should easily be able to access those documents. Clear and consistent standards for all in-house trainings have to be documented with dates of training and plans for retraining. And managers must be trained and audited for good record keeping and maintenance of training processes and logs. They also provided me with 3 pretty useful pamphlets from the DOT. And I think that maybe Heather, you can add that to the chat. I put links in to each one of these pamphlets. And that's all she wrote.
This is really, really helpful, very educational, and we did just put those links in the chat. Any panel members have questions or want to further the conversation and comment? Jay Townley, please.
Just for clarification, Karen, was this the federal DOT inspector? This was
Yes.
not state of California.
Federal DOT.
Thank you.
There's another question here from George Kirchner. George?
Thanks. Karen, that was really good. I appreciate you taking the time to share that out with us. So I put this question in the chat, and the work that I do for our trade association, PRBA, we do a lot of work in this transportation area and have a great working relationship with the folks over at PHMSA. Just to clarify, because someone asked this question in the chat, but the agency that knocked on your door is from the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials and Safety Administration, or PHMSA. They're part of the US DOT, and DOT is a very large agency that includes the Coast Guard, the Federal Aviation Administration, Railroad Administration, et cetera. So it's PHMSA that knocked on your door, and they're well intended, but they found a lot of non-compliant shippers out there with lithium batteries, and there have been fires as a result of that, which is why they've been knocking on everybody's door lately. So my question for you, I guess, comment and a question, the safety data sheets we refer to as MSDSs, that's not DOT's purview. That comes from OSHA. They may ask for that, but that's not required by the U.S. Hazardous Materials Regulation. So
Yes, that's correct.
yeah, so but the UN 38.3 test summaries or test sheets, as you refer to them as, they are absolutely, everybody should have an electronic copy of those in their files if they are shipping batteries, that is, or your e-bikes. And that is generally required, as you said, by the hazmat regs. And to your credit, your suppliers were very good about providing those in fairly short order. My only question for you, and this was in the chat, and I think most people that are on the call know this, when you ship e-bikes with batteries installed, they're provided a very broad exception from the hazmat regs. You don't need training, period. Okay, and I make sure everybody's clear about that. So e-bikes, batteries installed, shipped domestically by ground, point of clarification. You don't need the training. If you put them in the air or ship them internationally, absolutely the training kicks in. So my only question for you, and I apologize for being so verbose and taking over here. Do you ever ship just standalone batteries, new or used?
No, the new wheel does not. We've never shipped standalone batteries.
Okay.
And there's a guide in the lithium battery guide for shippers, which is in these links.
Yep.
There is specific information about the requirements for batteries shipped on products. The decision we've made internally is that if we stock the battery, we maintain the records, just because the tone of the inspector was very demanding.
Yeah.
And I don't particularly want to be in a situation going forward where I'm pointing out the exceptions. I just want to have the documentation and be able to hand it over to them.
Good for you. Yeah. And yeah, it's unfortunate because some of these inspectors can be a little heavy-handed, but once you get past the inspector level and you get into the management over at PHMSA, they're actually really good to work with. And it's unfortunate it hasn't trickled down to some of the inspectors yet, that's for sure.
The inspector was great. To be
Okay.
fair, the inspector was great, but they showed up in the middle of June, which is our busy season.
Right.
And I felt unprepared by the industry because I had never heard of the test sheet.
Yeah.
And so that was my main. Had I known that information earlier, I would have, I think it would have been a different situation.
Yeah. No, to your credit, you did really well. But you're right. They can show up completely unannounced. I mean, I've had clients call me and say, listen, DOT's at my door. Do I have to let them in? Of course you have to let them in, right? So you did a really good job. So nice work there. That's it. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, George. And for those attendees who did not hear, George is with the Rechargeable Battery Association. Any other panel members want to ask questions or comment? Michael.
Yeah, I just want to say, Karen, it's great that you brought this to light so other shops are well educated. I'm in Canada, but I know regulations may be a little bit different, but it's great that you're sharing this with everybody because what happens there eventually is going to happen here. Inspections and things like that. So thank you for sharing with the group.
Thank you, Michael.
No problem.
Call to action for suppliers on the UN 38.3. Corinne, there is a question in the chat. A retailer, it's a bike nonprofit, and e-bikes have been coming in. They store their bikes in a warehouse, donated bikes in a warehouse. Do you know if these protocols will be applicable to stuff stored in warehouses, but not the actual retail environment?
Yeah, so I was just looking at Kellen's question. I mean, Kellen, I would encourage you to, so these rules only apply if you're shipping the bikes or you're shipping batteries. And so they likely don't apply to what you're doing. I would encourage you not to ship used bikes that you don't know the source of very well, because that's a pretty high risk activity, I would argue. But I would recommend that you work closely, or at least carefully prod your local fire department to understand what their feelings are about all of this, and be very, very careful about how you charge those bikes. So organizationally at the New Wheel, we have rules. We don't charge anything that don't charge any batteries off of bikes. we actually don't charge systems that we don't sell, but that's a little bit of a different situation for you. So I would be especially careful with charging and long-term storage. I would date the bikes. I would, I think there's a lot of used bike management is somewhat complicated.
Awesome. Thank you, Corinne. And we will make this recording available and have the links that Corinne shared in the NBDA member resources for everyone as well. I think George from PRBA did want to chime in again. George?
Yeah, thanks. I apologize for taking the mic again, but the one thing as far as the storage go, and Karen is 100% right, DOT has no jurisdiction over that, but the fire code and building codes have recently changed in a lot of states, and there's a lot of new requirements that are coming into effect for the storage of lithium batteries. We spent, our association spent a lot of time on these fire code and building codes. So California, Washington are two states that have adopted these new codes, but they'll be coming to a state where you live, that's for sure. So just be aware that those new fire and building codes could impact you down the road in terms of how you're storing your batteries in warehouses and retail stores, wherever it might be. So just kind of a heads up. Thanks, Heather.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment or ask a question? Corinne, thank you as always for your time here and for sharing this important information. Okay, let's move on then to our first topic of exploration, enhancing the use of the e-bike battery safety kits provided by Call to Recycle. So Call to Recycle is a comprehensive program that provides e-bike battery safety kits to shops at no cost. Many retailers may not be aware of their ability or possibly lack the training to use them effectively. So the question that is posed is, how can the industry improve awareness and offer better training resources to ensure that these kits are used to their full potential? I absolutely love this question. Our first speaker, we're thankful to have Rob Latham from Call to Recycle. Rob, thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate the opportunity to speak with the group. So as Heather mentioned, the industry worked with us at Call to Recycle to create a comprehensive program. Really a key driver for this creation of this program was safety and prevention. Realizing that millions of these e-bikes were going into the market, these batteries are expected, a lot of them are expected to eventually show up at your shops. So, safety is a key driver, and then also just having a pathway to recycle these batteries is important for everyone involved, the consumer, the retailer, as well as the manufacturers. So to that end, the components making up the program are first a training course for all the participating collection sites or bike shops that is done online, and then recycling kits for end-of-life batteries, and also a solution for damaged or defective batteries. And then there is a safety kit for I would just use the analogy of a fire extinguisher is the way to think about that. It's your kind of last line of defense if you have an issue. And so when we're talking about education and really just information about safety, it should always include really lead with prevention. Again, the key driver for this program is getting the batteries out of the shop as quick as possible. You shouldn't have end-of-life batteries or especially damaged batteries sitting in the shop. Some things that we've done to sort of help spread awareness within the program. We've done some webinars with NBDA. I think we're open to doing that again. We've also kind of attended CABDA shows and done visits in person at shops. But I would love to hear ideas, any new ideas that anyone has about how to approach the whole safety and prevention topic. I think I've learned a lot personally just from being on these panels and hearing from others. And I think, and I totally agree with those who have shared videos and seen videos of an event happening. You don't want that. That does not need to be, that safety kit or the fire extinguisher, as I drew the analogy to, should not be your that shouldn't be your plan. You know, that's there as a resource or as a tool that works. We know it works to put out a lithium-ion battery fire, but you know, it should start mostly with prevention. And would love to, you know, have maybe dedicated webinars to and collaborate with folks on more of a comprehensive approach there.
Excellent. Thank you, Rob. Yeah, I know when Rob saw that this topic was up for conversation, he's like, let's do webinars, let's get going. So very eager to make stuff happen in that regard. We have one more speaker, and then I'd like to open it up to panel members for the feedback that Rob's requesting. Michael from the Canadian Electric Bike Association.
Hello, everyone, and thank you, Heather, for having these meetings. They're great. So I wanted to talk a little bit about Call to Recycle on the Canadian side. They recently did a rebrand. It's called Recycle Your Batteries Canada. Same type of program, works a little bit differently in Canada. But one of the safety issues, like Rob was saying, your Libet kit is not your first line defense, it's prevention, right? So having your staff being able to recognize a dangerous battery. I actually took the training in the US. Rob opened it up for me, so I took it. I wanted to get as much information as I possibly could. So one of them is not letting them in your store in the first place, right? When you're able to recognize a battery that may be damaged or unsafe, you don't want it in your store. So that's your kind of first line of defense, having your staff being able to recognize instead of just onboarding any bike that comes in your shop. If you can get the batteries in, it's a great program, because a lot of shops, when you do change a lithium battery, what do you do with the old one? You can't have a big pile of lithium batteries just sitting in the corner of your shop. So you need a way to get them out. And the Call to Recycle or Recycle Your Batteries Canada program is a great program. We've actually partnered with them here in Canada and are endorsing them for dealers. It's a great way to get a battery in your shop that's end of life and get it out the same day, so you're not leaving it there overnight. When you told me the story about the person's shop yesterday, Heather, you know, they had it in a cabinet. What else can they possibly do, right? But there are mitigation strategies prior to even letting that in your shop. I have one of the kits. I'll show everyone here just quickly. I have one of these in my shop on the wall. It's a lithium battery incident kit that Call to Recycle provides in the US. They're not providing them in Canada yet, but I was a little proactive and got myself one. So you should be having those kits in your shop, having your staff trained on how to use them. And Rob's right, it's your last line of defense. Prior to that, I had no answer for if a lithium battery fire started. Obviously, you want to have a fire plan in place, have your staff trained, where you charge your batteries, where your, you know, battery testing is becoming a big portion of our industry. People have bikes that are a few years old. They want to get their battery tested. How do you discharge a battery safely, right? Without having the risk of an unknown battery. Do you even want to take that risk on? That's a part of our industry that's happening. People do have to test batteries, and shops need to be able to do that. I've also incorporated this kit into our e-bike technician training program because I want to raise awareness for it. So that's huge. We have a whole section dedicated to that. One of the things that comes with this kit, I want to show everybody, there's a fire blanket. That's to protect the individuals when they're approaching the fire. The key part of it is this pad, this pillow that comes with your kit. So this pillow would go over a lithium battery that would be suspect. Either it's smoking or it's making noises. The key is to get that pillow over it and get it out of your shop as soon as possible. One of the things, and I know a lot of people in the US have these kits. A good piece of advice I can give to every shop that has these kits currently, because it's hanging on the wall, it's more of a reactive. So when something happens, you're reaching for the kit. One of the things that I do in my shop that I thought of just staring at it, when I'm testing batteries, I thought, why do I wait? Why do I have to wait for a fire to break out to do something? So what I did was, and I'm sure you'll love this, Rob, is I take this pillow when we're testing a battery and I put it on top of the battery that I'm testing. So if something does break out, it can do its job and suppress the fire and give us a chance to get the battery outside. So I think that's a great tip. I've actually incorporated that into our training. And for the existing NBDA members or Call to Recycle members that have this kit, you can take that pad out and put it on the battery. If you need 2 kits, I don't know how you go about that, one for your wall and one for the existing battery that you're working on. But that's something that's very proactive, that if that shop may have had one of those kits and had that battery in the cabinet and had that pad on top of it, it could have prevented that fire. So that's if I can take away one big thing on this, it's having that pad, you know, maybe have one on your wall, have another one to go on top of a battery that's maybe suspect. Another thing is being able to diagnose the bikes quickly. You don't want bikes sitting overnight that you don't know, or you don't trust. So having the ability to diagnose and get them out quickly is very important.
Thank you, Michael. I hope that the retailers listening found value in seeing the actual kit. So I appreciate you showing the kit, and hopefully that'll help. To the panel members and to our attendees, the question is, how can we improve awareness? Make sure more of these kits are used to their full potential. Outside of discussing this topic now, outside of NBDA webinars and the work People for Bikes has done with Call to Recycle, does anyone else have any other ideas that we would offer up? Dawn Miller, thank you. Nice to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for the presentations. One of the issues that we face in New York is certainly plenty of fires in our garbage trucks. I think very low rates of recycling micromobility batteries. I think one of the big challenges that a very, very large share of the batteries in circulation are not from the brands that participate in the voluntary program. So, you know, we last session, and I expect again this session, we're supporting state legislation to create, you know, mandatory programs for recycling, because it's just this huge gap that we see, because it's currently a voluntary program. So if there are others who kind of want to support those types of initiatives and get attention on this issue, that is always appreciated. The other thing I'll mention, you know, is just like incentivizing consumers to participate, because it is so much easier just to kind of like put the battery out on the curb and hope for the best, you know, and although bringing it to a bike shop is certainly easier than like the current than alternatives. Like right now we have some like city collection sites, but it's like one per borough. It's quite onerous to get there for a lot of people. So I think the bike shop, getting them at all the bike shops participating is a big step. I do think there's only a certain like segment of people who care enough to make that trip. So I don't know if folks have thought about whether there should be some sort of like incentive for the consumer to bring it in, if it's some sort of like deposit system like we have for cans in some states, but like if you get $20 for bringing your battery in to be recycled, to kind of get another segment who might not do it just for safety reasons, but might do it if they had a little personal benefit to go along with it. So just those are my thoughts on the recycling topic.
Dawn, thank you. I know that there are some retailers who have discussed something like that fee for returning it for recycling. So I like that. We have a couple other panelists who wish to comment. Rob from Call to Recycle.
Just some quick comments, and thank you, Dawn. That one, you know, along the lines of convenience and making it easy. We know that nobody will recycle anything if it's not easy. So part of our goal, and I think with us all working together, we need to make sure that we make it very easy for the consumer to do this. It's also illegal, so maybe some education about don't throw this in the trash, because you know you could get in serious trouble for that. You could hurt someone. Also, reach out to manufacturers if there's a brand that you sell in your shop. For all the retailers listening, reach out to the manufacturers. If they don't participate in this program, ask them for, their program to handle the end of life batteries, or refer them to us to get involved and join. There's a pathway for all manufacturers to get into this program, even though it is voluntary, as Dawn mentioned. Although that is changing, a few states have passed legislation, Illinois, Vermont, Washington. I know New York is working on some stuff. There are others that are working on this requirement. And so we should see more manufacturers participating. And lastly, the kit itself, if you need, as Michael mentioned, more than one, those can be purchased. Or if you're a shop and you don't sell anything, you're not a dealer for any of these brands, you can also purchase these kits from us, or the manufacturer, which is called Cell Block. The components of the kit, as Michael said, there's some PPE, there's the blanket, which is also kind of a shield, and then there's the pillow that actually works through a phase shift to actually stop the thermal runaway. And so I appreciate you showing that. And again, thanks for the opportunity here to speak to the group.
It's a great discussion. Yeah, Larry Peasy.
Yeah, hi, Heather. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today. A couple things that I've seen work successfully at retailers has been implementing sort of a training procedure for all staff members so that they can be informed and educated about the risks in handling lithium-ion batteries or e-bikes with lithium-ion batteries, and the service component. And one of the drivers that I've seen work very well is, everyone knows that manufacturers pay a per bike fee to Call to Recycle when they sell a bike. And I have found that a few retailers that basically take that basis, sometimes it's a line item on an invoice, that fee ultimately is getting passed on to in the selling price of the bike, the wholesale selling price of the bike. Brands aren't absorbing that, they're building it in. And I think awareness around the fact that you're paying for it as a retailer is an opportunity to get your staff motivated by saying, hey, there's a fee involved with this recycling, we've paid that. And some retailers are actually forwarding the charge onto the end consumer. And that builds a conversation around recycling and battery safety. And I think it's a financial component that, a retailer can train their staff as part of, sort of a checkout procedure, much the way we do with, sort of a safety checklist on use of a non-electric bicycle. A lot of retailers continue to do that. It's one more component to speak to the end consumer about. And if a retail associate has to have that conversation with the consumer, of course, they have to be knowledgeable about it. And as a result, needs to be trained by store management. And, this goes hand in glove with training how to use the components that are in that kit. Hanging it on the wall might be the equivalent of having a fire extinguisher at your location, but if no one knows how to use it, it does little good. So, I think building it into sort of an operational process or procedure can work really well. And, retailers that are serious about it, and everyone should be, that's an actionable way to ensure that it's included.
Thank you, Larry. Yeah, and Call to Recycle has worked in lockstep with the NBDA to make sure retailers are educated. We have some of their resources and links on our website, and we will work with Rob to plan future webinars and cab to show participation, I'm sure, as we've done in the past. Thank you to Call to Recycle for that. Any other panel members want to continue this conversation? Any other comments or questions?
I just think, Heather, just like lead acid batteries, just quickly, when you go get a lead acid battery for your car or your vehicle, you pay a core charge. So Larry is right. If you want to engage in that conversation, when they come and get their next battery, they drop it off. Lead acid batteries work the same way. So why doesn't it work like that for lithium batteries? And it should. And I can say one thing about Call to Recycle as well. It increased my store traffic. So I would encourage every retailer to participate in the program. People come in with batteries that maybe otherwise wouldn't have came in my store. And then it gives us an opportunity to educate them as well.
Thank you, Michael. And Rob, we do have one question in the chat from an attendee I'd like to answer live if we can. The question is, how do I recycle non-participating brand batteries that are not accepted at locations listed on the Call to Recycle locator?
I think that the first course of action is contact that manufacturer and find out what their recycling plan is. It's important to reach out to the manufacturer to find that out, and to at least to build awareness that, hey, they need to be thinking about the end of life of their product. And then secondarily, it would be look locally. You may get lucky and find that your household hazardous waste in your city or municipality has a hazardous waste day, maybe once every other month or something like that, where you could carry the battery.
Thank you. All right, let's move on to topic 2. Thank you everyone for the conversation around topic 1. Topic 2 is best practices for servicing low quality e-bikes. We want to ensure safety and manage liability. The question exactly reads, what best practices can be created to handle the challenges of servicing low quality e-bikes while ensuring the customer's safety, satisfaction, and managing those liability risks? The question was submitted by retailer Phil Cohen from Chain Reaction Bicycle in Georgia. Phil, would you like to just open up this conversation for us?
Yeah, just like any retailer, we work hard to get people to come to our stores. And when they do, I hate to say no or send them away. It's not in my nature. But just like we've dealt with really, really cheap quality department store bikes, for kids mostly over the years, and we've tried to decide these bikes are so bad that we don't feel good sending them out. Now we've got heavier, faster bicycles that are coming from God knows where, and they've got these battery issues. And as a retailer, I don't know when to say no. I don't want to say no, but I know that once I touch it, I create liability. Maybe Scott can talk to that. But, I'm in a quandary because, there's so many different things from so many places. And I want to say yes, but I don't want to create a liability. And I don't want to hamstring myself with these bikes that are unsafe and send people out on things that are unsafe. So I think a lot of retailers, we're trying to figure this out as we go. And it would really be nice if, as an industry, we could kind of have, coalesce around some rules of dealing with things. I know we can all adopt our own strategies, but I just don't know what to do.
Excellent. Thank you, Phil. Well, we have 2 speakers who wish to comment, and then we will open it up. And Scott from Marsh & McLennan Insurance will be speaker 2, so we'll hear from him. Starting us off, Michael Pasquale from the Canadian Electric Bicycle Association.
Okay, so let me just get my information up here. Can everybody see that okay?
Perfect, thank you.
So best practices, so addressing what Phil said, best practices for servicing low quality e-bikes, ensuring safety, consumer satisfaction, and managing liability. I run a shop too, Phil, so I get it. I don't want to say no to anybody, right? So some of the things to put outwards there to consumers is consumers need to do a little bit of research on the brand before purchasing. You don't want to just purchase the cheapest e-bike you can find online, as it will cost you more. It might fall apart. You may not have good parts availability. Make sure the company's physically located in your country, so you don't want to buy something online overseas and have it shipped in. Do they have a dealer network for service? Do the batteries meet UL 2271 or 2849 standards? Do they have parts readily available? Because if, Phil, we want to help people but can't get parts for it, we just can't help them. Who's assembling the bike? You're getting it in a box and you have to kind of assemble it yourself. E-bikes need adjustments and final checks to ensure properly adjusted components and a thorough check over the whole bike for safety. And my thought is you're always better off purchasing from a dealer, as dealers can ensure a proper fitment, screen suppliers, provide maintenance, and an overall better experience. There's no substitute for putting your butt in the seat to get at a dealership to get a feel for the bike before you purchase it as well. Ensuring customer and staff safety. So I added staff safety because that's important. Like we said, I believe Larry was saying, getting your staff trained as well. That's very important. A thorough evaluation, conduct a detailed inspection of the bike before agreeing to service it. Require a pre-repair inspection tune-up. A once-over may be necessary to ensure the bike is safe mechanically and electrically. If Uncle Bob assembled it and, you know, he didn't tighten the nuts or bolts or the handlebars or adjust the brakes properly, I don't think you want to be the next person to, you know, just change a grip on it or do something on the bike and give it back. So you may have to implement a service and build that bike properly like it's a new build and have a fee associated with that in order to perform the service that they came for. Provide safety tips. Some people are new to e-bikes or purchase used bikes, and they really do appreciate when a dealer goes the extra mile and takes the time to educate them with safety pointers. Refuse unsafe repairs. I know, Phil, we don't want to do it in our shops, right? But sometimes you have to. I don't do it often, but I do refuse service. If the e-bike has critical safety issues that cannot be effectively repaired, refuse service. It's better to not service the bike than to risk a customer's safety and your liability. And do not work on or modify an e-bike. Use OEM components. So it's good practice to use replacement electrical components from or recommended by the manufacturer. Another thing about the UL 2849, you shouldn't be using third-party parts on that. You should be using the parts from the manufacturer or recommended by a manufacturer. Test driving a bike after every repair. It's a chance to catch something unsafe or dangerous. And getting your staff trained. That's a critical part. Training is critical. Get as much training as your staff as possible, both for mid-drive, hub motors. We do SEBA technician training, mainly focused on hub motors, which represents most of the market, and some of the lower cost bikes. It's developed for the challenges e-bike dealers face daily, from recognizing the dangers. Let me see here. Recognize a dangerous situation, e-bike or battery, ensuring employee and customer safety, as well as navigating the diagnostic process around e-bikes. So I heard it come up a few times, the training with lithium batteries. Well, the bike is attached to that. You want to have good practices for working on the bikes as well. So ensuring customer satisfaction, clear communications. Every shop will have different policies and procedures on the limitations of what mechanics or what their shop can and will repair. Clearly communicating your policy to customers before a repair is critical. You don't want somebody saying, well, you didn't tell me that, or they have different expectations. Customers that purchase low quality bikes, they're all going to need service eventually. Will you provide it or another shop? At my shop, we service all makes and models and rarely refuse service unless it's unsafe, it's been modified, and somebody messed with the wiring. We don't want to be accountable for that. Clear explanations. Break down the repairs needed in simple language, especially for customers unfamiliar with technical terms. Explain why certain repairs are necessary and what might happen if they're not addressed. After completing any repair, especially when dealing with the electrical system or battery, perform a final check to ensure everything works perfectly. This will ensure customer satisfaction, avoid any rework. And when customers come in, because we service all makes and models, we're a pretty busy shop, That gives us an opportunity to educate the customer and recommend better models over time. We see the people with the low-cost bikes keep coming back for different things. We kind of tell them, you might want to take a look at a better quality bike. So if the customer repeatedly experiences issues, gently suggest investing in a higher quality model when they're ready. Frame it in a way to avoid ongoing repair costs for lower quality e-bikes and improve their overall riding experience. And managing liability risk, I'm sure Scott's going to have a lot to say about it. Digital service records. Keep a digital record of every customer's e-bike, tracking previous repairs, parts used, and services performed. And any recommended services. If it's not documented, it didn't happen. Focus on critical safety issues, prioritizing fixing essential safety components such as brakes, tires, and electrical systems. Document any safety-related repairs that the customer declines, and have them sign off in their refusal. This ensures that you made a good faith effort to address any safety concerns. Refuse unsafe repairs. If a low-quality bike is deemed too unsafe to repair, or if the customer refuses the necessary safety-related work, consider refusing service to protect yourself from that liability. Document the decision and the reasons behind it. New and existing technicians need training. Working on e-bikes can be dangerous without any training. With lithium batteries, wires, motors, and high amperage, an employee can be injured or electrocuted if not specially trained to understand how to work on e-bikes safely. Without training, they may not recognize a potential danger to themselves or a customer's e-bike. And ensure that training is up to date. So if you have mid-drive from Bosch or any other company, I know they do a great job and they won some awards for it. Hub motors, lithium battery safety, and best practices for working on e-bikes safely. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Michael. And we can make a copy of that presentation available to attendees as well. Scott Chapin, would you like to proceed as speaker number 2, please?
Certainly. Yeah, thanks for having me. I didn't do any visuals because I didn't know exactly what Michael was going to discuss before me. So I will kind of pivot a little bit and talk more about, best practices and really how it pertains to liability. Many of you know we have a bike shop insurance program we've had since 2007. We insure well over 100 bicycle manufacturing brands. So I kind of get to see both sides of things, retail and manufacturing risks. And specific to e-bikes, it's kind of a lot to digest sometimes. So, I want to piggyback, and obviously the physical best practices for risk mitigation, pretty much everything's been, a lot of the things that I normally would discuss, Michael hit. How do you prevent physically, what are the best practices within your shop to prevent claims? I think part of the inherent problem with retailers is they tend to be people pleasers and not good at saying no. So we sort of have 3 buckets of, I guess, sort of internal views on risk management, for retailers. We have shops that they'll work on anything. They don't care. They just want the revenue. Then you have 2, sort of that middle risk tolerance, where it's like they'll only work on the either brands they sell or only on the bicycle, the bicycle, not the electrical components. And then we have sort of the most those who are really take it most seriously. They're just going to be selling or working on the bikes that they sell, the brands that they sell. And, the angle that I kind of want to take a look at is the why. I spoke to the retailer that had that unfortunate fire, and it was like, no, I kept thinking to myself, they're trying to do the right thing, recycle the battery, no good deed goes unpunished, and they had a pile of smoke damage. It wasn't a pure thermal event, lots of smoke damage, and ultimately, they were doing the right thing, other than maybe having the battery stored outside. So, and they even had the their internal rules are, we'll work on your e-bike on the bike part, but you're bringing the battery home with you. Here it was in the process of being recycled. So the types of claims that we see up and down the line, the vertical, whether it's retail to a manufacturer, oftentimes, and I think Phil, you said it, those where it gets to be scary is there's a lot of unknown data on the brands that you may be servicing. Obviously, if you're a direct retailer, well, you can be pretty confident they have product liability. We know it's a U.S. domiciled insurance carrier. They're here in Wisconsin, where I am. Perfect example. But what about brand A through Z that you're unfamiliar with? You can look and see, do they have is their product certified at 2849? Are the batteries UL 2271? I mean, that's all. Those are like first and foremost, maybe it's okay to work on them. But the scary part, and I know the NBDA has tried to get an opt-in product liability list, if they don't have a U.S. domiciled legal entity, U.S. insurance carrier, yes, you, by being the last in the stream of commerce, are probably going to be, I'm not an attorney, but attorneys tell me this, we see it in the claims, you're holding more liability. So that's where it gets to be really scary, and why an internal risk management program, meaning staff training, the staff all have to be on the same page. It needs to be in writing, like, we will work on these category A, B, and C with, caveat E and F and G might be, we'll work on the bike part, but you bring in the battery with, we don't want any of that risk. And it needs to be very consistent. The staff, it's sometimes we see claims, this is not even, I guess it's kind of a parallel where, staff might not know the rules regarding punching in a credit card number, and they sell a bike online and then they get a chargeback. Well, why did that happen? Well, the one person in the shop didn't know the rule. You need to know the rules. They need to be in writing. And again, I always think of, the plaintiff's attorney, what kind of questions would they ask? I can't help but imagine that, if a fire occurred and you were the last in the stream of commerce to touch that bike or to work on it, the plaintiff's attorney, if it's a foreign domiciled brand, they're probably not going to have any luck trying to subrogate or go after that particular brand. So they might just like, well, let's try to get what we can out of this shop since they were last in the stream of commerce. And they may ask the questions, what is your protocol? Do you work on any bike? Do you work on the electrical system in any bike? You need to be able to answer those questions on the front end in a way that the plaintiff's attorney does not want you to answer that, right? Because that's how they're getting their cut, right? And we see it all the time where everybody ultimately gets, they end up getting named in the suit, manufacturer, maybe it's a distributor, maybe it's a retailer. So you need to kind of just prepare yourself by having good data, and a lot of the data that Michael had in his PowerPoint is super powerful. I mean, again, back to record keeping. I always go back to, what does the auto industry do? I brought my wife's car in to get an oil change. They noticed that her brakes were down to 10%. What did they do? It's like they said, they made us sign something acknowledging that and acknowledging whether we wanted to have that brake work done on the spot. So sometimes somebody might come in with something that needs to be repaired on the bike, but then you discover something else. You need to let them know that something else is wrong with that bike and have a paper trail. You need a paper trail. The bicycle industry in the 17 years I've been working in it has gotten much better, but I would still say light years behind what we see in other industries, meaning the paper, the ability to retrieve an archivable service record from 3 years ago when your mechanic is long gone. Can you get that? Because it could be requested if there's a claim or a suit. So I think that's super duper important. And, you know, you got to just be very cautious that, and I see it all the time. And, you know, a lot of these direct to consumer brands that are produced overseas that without a US legal entity, you know, they're way safer than you are in the event of a claim if push comes to shove, because you're here in the States, you're selling product in the States, and they're, you know, in another country, and you have to make that assumption that whatever insurance they have or don't have is not really going to help you whatsoever. So again, I think it's just there's a lot of different things you can do, but I think you just need to have it in writing, part of your handbook or whatever it might be. Your policies and procedures need to be consistent, and every staff member needs to really abide by those, just to help mitigate that risk. Again, bike shops owners tend to be people pleasers. They're not good at saying no. They try to work on everything, and it's kind of the point where it's too risky just to work on anything to be a people pleaser. You have to kind of put your foot down. Is it worth that potential risk for your shop for an $89 service fee? I don't think so, because I've seen enough claims up and down the pipe that, you know, that are pretty large. And that's the other scary thing with e-bike batteries. You think about if you're working on a bike and you're just doing a regular repair, bleeding brakes, right? If somebody gets injured, it's N equals 1. And here, what's scary is, and where the insurance industry has a little difficulty wrapping their heads around the whole risk is, you know, if a battery or, you know, the product that you sold or serviced starts on fire in the basement of an apartment building, you have just multiples and multiples of that same amount of risk, both bodily injury and property damage claims. So it's you just need to, I don't want to sound like I need to try to scare you, but you need to have some consistency with rules and what you will work on and what you won't, and be able to train the employees to explain to your customer the why. So that's pretty much all I have for now. So
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, it's time for clear policy and protocol. That paper trail is very important. Any other panel members wish to share thoughts? Excellent. Phil, I hope that gave a little insight to your question. Yeah, excellent. Excellent. I do need to move on to the next topic as we're at time here. So topic 3, industry perspectives on DMV licensing for e-bikes. So exploring the rationale and alternative solutions. The question reads, how does the bike industry view proposals to license e-bikes and their operators through Department of Motor Vehicles, similar to mopeds and motorcycles? And what are the key reasons behind this stance? Are there viable alternatives such as technology or regulation that could effectively address safety and behavior concerns? Definitely a conversation we've seen more and more. This topic was introduced by Dawn Miller, Senior Advisor to the Chief Climate Officer in New York City. I'm going to ask Dawn to go ahead and just introduce this to the panel, and then we do have 2 speakers and we'll open it up. Dawn?
Great, thank you, Heather, and thanks to you and the NBDA for taking this question. So just to provide a little context, you know, there are legislative proposals at the New York City local and New York state level that would require registration of e-bikes. The local proposal is focused only on registering e-bikes and giving them a license plate, which those advocating for it believe would lead to greater accountability for breaking vehicle traffic laws and hit and runs. The proposals at the New York state level are a little more expansive. They would require registration, but also things like insurance and things like we see with mopeds and motorcycles. And I've seen media coverage around the country with localities trying to figure out how to improve safety given the greater speeds and power e-bikes have relative to acoustic bikes. So advocates for these policies believe they'll lead to safer riding and more accountability. They see e-bikes and e-scooters as more dangerous than traditional bikes. opponents of these policies have a few reasons they oppose them. One is concerns that kind of equalizing the administrative and financial burden with mopeds and motorcycles might actually get some people to shift onto the faster and heavier mopeds and motorcycles. There are concerns it could create barriers to usage by lower income groups, immigrants. And some are saying there really just isn't much evidence that licensing schemes in this industry improve safety or accountability. And just to provide a few stats, you know, and this year so far, you know, by far, motor vehicles continue to be the most dangerous vehicles on our streets. They killed or seriously injured 544 pedestrians, 28 were killed or seriously injured by mopeds, 20 by traditional bikes, 12 by e-bikes, and 12 by stand-up scooters, and 11 by motorcycles. In terms of fatalities for the riders, 12 have been killed on their e-bikes, 3 on their e-scooters, 4 on traditional bikes, 15 on mopeds, and 26 on motorcycles. And so really we're searching for solutions that will actually work. You know, we're working with our city council to develop a regulatory framework to increase responsibility on the delivery app companies who create this environment that can incentivize like rushed riding behaviors. You know, infrastructure is a top intervention to help the cyclists feel safe, but it doesn't always provide a solution for pedestrians who all around the city are kind of showing up to town halls and telling their elected officials they feel less safe crossing the street or walking down the sidewalk as we have more and more e-bikes and e-scooters in our mix. So I would love sort of this group's perspective on licensing proposals of this type. I'm interested in what you think about those, and if you have ideas for other types of policies or interventions to keep both cyclists and pedestrians safe. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn, for the background. It's a very important topic. We have 2 speakers. We'll start with Clint Sandusky, e-bike expert, law enforcement bike patrol instructor. Clint?
Hopefully you can hear me, Heather.
Yep, perfect. Thank you.
Great. I'm on my phone technology. I couldn't get on my computer. Kind of like Dawn mentioned and you mentioned, this issue is a new, complex, and challenging one. I understand there's good intentions on both sides of this issue. So for my time, I want to respectfully be a voice of concern or opposition to enacting such regulations or laws, at least initially. I'll leave how the industry views this to Larry and others. Unfortunately, you know, we in law enforcement and government understand when laws are enacted, a lot of times there are unintentional consequences. And so I want to throw out a hypothetical question to everybody. Here in the United States, historically and currently, is riding a bicycle, and by extension, an e-bike, a right or a privilege? So hopefully everybody said it's a right, and that's such a cool thing. I mean, freedom to ride a bicycle or an e-bike. If some of these laws are enacted where a operator has to have either a driver's license or some special e-bike operator's permit, does that right of riding a bicycle then become a privilege? And as we know, for drivers or motor vehicles, it's a privilege which can be taken away. So therefore, could our privilege to ride an e-bike be taken away? I don't know. Also, anytime government is involved, and in this case, the DMV, there will be requirements, kind of like Dawn mentioned, and fees involved, whether it's licensing of the e-bikes or the operators. Also, in talking about licensing or registering e-bikes, would DMV personnel even know the difference between a legally compliant e-bike and one that's not, and including out-of-class electric vehicles? Another issue when it comes to these possible laws, regulations. Is a law if it's not adhered to, or if it's enforced? So that's something to think about as well. I certainly understand the good intentions for such proposed requirements, and I cite a bill out here in California by an assembly member down in San Diego County, very similar to what we're discussing. That bill is dead, and I'm happy for that, but I can see her intentions. You may have heard about it, the incident down in Encinitas with a 15-year-old on an e-bike. Her personal relationship with it, one of her children went to the school where this 15-year-old went. So he was on his e-bike, did an unexpected lane change, apparently didn't do a rear scan or signal, and he was run over by a work van and later died. So I can certainly see why she went all out in proposing her bill, and that's California Assembly Bill 530. You can look it up. And kind of lastly, the last question, are there viable alternatives? And I think viable is the key word. I do believe it's going to take a comprehensive approach involving all stakeholders through education, engineering, and enforcement, and encouragement too. And I believe in this case, when we talk education, I think at first it needs to be voluntary, not mandatory. And the bicycling industry needs to take a page out of the motorcycle industry back in the 70s. When the Motorcycle Safety Foundation first created their course, it was voluntary. So I think that would be a good step. Education being voluntary compliance. And like I said, I think education is the first step and key to greater safety out on the road for all roadway users. And I will say the industry has finally recognized this and is taking steps to better promote it. But more needs to be done, whether it's from the industry, parents, schools, some schools down in SoCal. And here's where I like mandatory education. They're requiring their kids who ride either conventional or e-bikes to school to at least take an online course, pass it, bring the certificate to the school, and they're given a permit to ride their bike or e-bike to school. So I think that's a good thing. And I do also believe, as I've written in Bicycle Retailer before, I do believe that the retailers are the first step in safety for anybody riding an e-bike or a bicycle. So that's all I have, Heather. Thank you.
Thank you. It's great to hear your perspective and appreciate you sharing with the panel members in the industry at large. I'd like to turn it over now to Larry Peasy, Alta Cycling Group. Larry?
Hi, Heather. Thank you. From an industry perspective, licensing, registration, insurance is really not the way to make a substantive improvement in safety for vulnerable road users and even for motorists. It's a costly proposition that's going to deter people from getting on a bike or an e-bike or any other kind of micromobility device. And, we would advocate and propose to legislators to focus instead on funding and implementing connected and protected bicycling infrastructure, which can keep pedestrians, cyclists, and auto drivers safe simultaneously. I think, I completely agree with Clint because infrastructure isn't something that that happens instantaneously. It will take time. I'm really pleased to announce that it's a major initiative at People for Bikes, and the industry supports the Great Infrastructure program, which is under development. And even within the last 12 months, infrastructure in the United States has improved substantively. There's a rating system. It's pretty technical, but go on the People for Bikes website, you can dive into that and you can see the progress that has been made in the last year. The bottom line is requiring registration and insurance is not going to meaningfully address, roadway fatalities. Micromobility devices move much more slowly and weigh far less than a car. And that means simply that, crashes are less severe. So by focusing on low-speed e-bikes and scooters from a registration and insurance argument perspective, it really distracts from the #1 source of fatal and serious crashes in our country, which is, relates to large, heavy, fast-moving vehicles. Motor vehicles already require registration and insurance. And if anything, these regulations, if they were to be imposed, would make traffic safety worse by pushing more people to continue to drive cars rather than switching to an e-bike. And I also don't believe, and Scott might be able to answer this, but I don't think there's any insurance products that are currently available that could address requirements for users. The other thing relates to, and Don brought this up, and thank you for raising it, Don, increasing fees for e-bikes and micromobility devices only exacerbate the equity issues around mobility. And e-bikes and scooters are far less expensive than owning or operating a car, and individuals who rely on them for primary transportation are more likely to be low income, underprivileged, and or communities of color. So requiring insurance and registration will make these products less affordable, and may also lead to more unwarranted police stops targeting BIPOC riders. That's a huge concern. E-bikes are also more accessible and increasingly popular mobility options for others, all of whom deserve mobility independence, including seniors who benefit greatly from a pedal assist e-bike, young people that are under driving age. I know a lot of parents in my neighborhood have gotten their kids e-bikes and they're not doing nearly as much carpooling. So I think both the kids are appreciating that mobility independence and parents are appreciating not being chauffeurs. And other families that are transporting children without a second car, and certainly people with disabilities that are prevented from driving a car. So the net is, let's focus on education, #1. That's first and foremost. Secondarily, let's continue to do a better job of building great infrastructure so that vulnerable road users can be separated from pedestrians and high-speed, heavy motor vehicles, so that we can have harmony in the world.
Thank you, Larry. And I see some other comments in our chat. Kunal from Bosch did put a comment in agreement with Clint and Larry. Great conversation, and I think Scott's going to chime in to your comment, Larry, as well. Scott?
Yeah, Larry, you had, I think your question was regarding a product that's suitable for an e-bike as if it were, a moped or motorcycle. There are some products. I think we exchanged some back and forth the other day. There's a huge disconnect right now with personal lines insurance carriers and how they're addressing or not understanding the liability components tied to an e-bike. And so it's a whole topic for another discussion. There are some products, but in my mind, they're far from perfect. If you're a high net worth person, your point is the bigger the vehicle, the bike's always going to lose. So it's like there's scenarios where an e-bike could potentially cause a bodily injury claim to a pedestrian. And that's kind of what I'm discussing with the markets, is some carriers just don't cover that. So there is some risk, but really ultimately do e-bikes, in my opinion, need to be licensed? No, because inherently they're far less risky than all other modes of transportation practically. So I'm in agreement there, but subject for another time.
Excellent. Thank you, Scott. Would any other panel members like to comment at this time? All right, well, Dawn, some good conversations there, at least to consider.
Yeah, and I just had one nugget I wanted to put in everyone's minds. Thanks for the responses. I think I love the idea of parents not chauffeuring their children, but I also think there is I think we can't take the idea of putting teenagers on motorized vehicles that can achieve 28 miles an hour lightly. I think people take very seriously, and the government takes very seriously, the age, maturity, and training that are involved in operating a car, and the cars are more dangerous. People can really hurt themselves and others on those devices, and I think it's a gap. I also see, I mean, there are laws about in some states, you know, that you have to be at least 16. I don't think those exist everywhere. I also see these devices marketed to 6 to 10-year-olds. And I think talking about sort of regulatory gaps and kind of education gaps, I think a lot of parents just send their kid off on an e-bike too lightly when really it is a proposition that requires a lot of judgment, and it may be different in a very low density environment, but the skill you have to do so safely in urban environments, I think, is quite high, and I think that's an area of concern for me, that I think people are teens are enjoying the freedom, but many of them I don't think have been given like the proper training or oversight as they're adopting these vehicles. And I see them on electric city bikes or shared bikes, and behaving in ways that would give you all heart attacks.
Thank you, Dawn. We have a couple people commenting as well. Larry?
Yeah, I think I'm going to defer to Clint because I think his perspective on this subject is probably more on point than mine.
Thank you. All right, Clint.
Thanks, Larry. No, I was thinking about when Dawn was talking about some of our youth that are very young getting on e-bikes. I will say there is another California bill out there, AB 1778, which I support. I don't know how it will really be enforced or adhered to, but this bill, it's a pilot program out of Marin County, which is up in Northern California, which would prohibit a person under 16 years of age from operating either a class 1 or especially a class 2 e-bike, which of course the kids really like. And of course in California and many other states, to operate a class 3 e-bike, you've got to be at least 16, and everybody has to wear a helmet. So there are some other laws out there. I mean, are they a Band-Aid approach? Probably, but once again, like I mentioned before, well-intentioned.
Thank you, Clint. And we do have a hard stop at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, so I'm sorry, I do need to cut the conversation here. I do see some comments in chat from a retailer in California asking us to look at how Italy has been dealing with this as they put 14-year-olds on Vespas. Let's perhaps keep this conversation going. I'd love to revisit this at a future forum as well. I think we just skimmed the surface here. And I do think perhaps People for Bikes and the Bike League are probably working on this as well, and the NBDA will support their efforts. I'm seeing Larry nod, so I'm sure they're doing something there. And so we'll stay close on this one. I want to turn it over to Jay for a summary on today, and then we'll state the date of the next meeting and adjourn from there. Jay? Oh, Jay, you're on mute. Sorry.
Thank you. Being mindful of time, which I just got on mute and wasted. At this point, keep in mind that this whole session's been recorded. There will be notes published. So this is a quick overview for those of us that have been on the call. First of all, Karen, I think what you led off with relative to the DOT inspection was fantastic. I think from an overview standpoint, what we learned from that is stuff that the experts, I'm sure Larry knows all of or most of this, as do other people that are on the call. DOT inspectors and certainly the OSHA inspectors all have different things that they need to be responsible for. We're talking about the shipping of lithium-ion batteries primarily, and all of the things associated with it. But that being said, I think that retailers who are considered distributors, having the UN 38.3 test sheets and the MDS test sheets available, getting those from brands and manufacturers is an education point. The industry needs to work harder at getting that information out so retailers know what they're going to be asked about when the inspector walks in the door. I will add to that more federal agencies are getting concerned. So there's going to be more issues relative to what is the data, what is the information that a retailer is going to have, not the least of which is there was a recent CPSC ruling relative to Amazon, which will be appealed, we're sure, in federal courts. But as Amazon, as we speak today, is now considered to be a distributor, just like a bike shop, and therefore is going to have to provide the same sheets, the same proofs, the same validations, and the same certifications until we see where this ends up in the courts. But the point is that there's more pressure being put on the retail side to make sure that this information is available. So with that, NBDA, as Heather said, will share both the recordings. I think we need to do more work, though, from the standpoint of the contacts and the resources NBDA has. I, for one, think we should be putting more webinars on and take this as a topic in discussion. Then we moved on to topic one, the awareness and the training for the use of safety kits. Excellent. I think we're learning more about recycling as we get into every session. Thank you to Michael and the CEBA for the fine presentation. I think the keys are have a plan. Make sure you've got a safety plan. Make sure that we've got the upgrade safety kits and the training that's needed. And I think beyond that, we're back to an obligation for the industry to begin to dig in with Rob Latham and the Call to Recycle folks. We need to update those safety kits. We need to update those rules. Even though we don't have them fully implemented at this point, we're struggling to get more retailers involved. I think we're outrunning the current safety kits and the safety protocols that we have in place. And Dawn brought up an excellent point. That is, the garbage truck fires in New York City are also replicated around the country. People are throwing lithium-ion batteries away, and that's illegal, but it's also causing secondary problems within the environment. So this, I also think, is an important topic that, as Larry Peasy said, training of staff, training of consumers, we've got to get more education out there. I think it's an area, again, where we need to put more emphasis as an industry on educating across the board. And I think, Rob, the emphasis that I got out of this is, I think we better look at the next step, the next set of protocols, the next set of policies, the next Call to Recycle program with the updated kit. Topic two, and we looked very carefully at reviewing the quality of e-bikes and ensuring the safety of staff and the liability issues. Again, thanks to Michael and the CEBA for a slide presentation, which NBDA is going to make available. So in addition to the recording, be very aware that the whole of this deck fine presentation that Michael did will be available, boiling down to, you got to be sure that you're following procedure, that you're setting procedure. Scott Chapin did a fantastic job of cementing this, was saying that for insurance and liability issues, and this is risk management on the part of every one of us on the call and the different aspects of the disciplines we bring to this process, that we need to make sure that we're documenting. We need to have standard operating procedures in place from the industry all the way down, from manufacturers. And I see Michael Baker nodding his head from the test labs, all the way down to the retailer so that when the questions are asked, we've got the answers. This includes questions from consumers. So I think operating procedures and documentation, absolutely, definitely an issue here that we need to work on. Topic 3, licensing and what is the industry position? Dawn, excellent presentation. States and municipalities are up against current problems of micromobility as a group of means of transportation in the marketplace as a class, causing problems for pedestrians and people on the streets. Now, some of this, unfortunately, leads to fatalities, as well as major injury. So I do believe, as Clint said in his wrap up, need to look at those initiatives, particularly the state bills that are looking at operation of e-bikes without licensing, without mandatory registrations, without the additional insurance burdens, that we, quite frankly, as a society, need to figure out what to do with heavy and fast vehicles at this point, motor vehicles and e-vehicles, before we get to bicycles and micro-mobility devices. But it's an area of concern because the problems of accidents and injuries at this level with young people that are not trained, parents allowing kids that shouldn't be operating a 28 mile an hour or higher speed capability vehicle in the market without proper training and education are going to continue to cause us problems. Unless we come up with answers that are not, we don't like it, I think it's going to be more, what do we do about the safety issue? So with that said, please get the recording, look at it, turn to the NBDA and look at what the NBDA is going to schedule for ongoing webinars and ongoing discussion of these topics, which are absolutely excellent. And my thanks to all the speakers. And I hope I didn't make too much of a hash in the summary of what you presented.
Excellent. Thank you, Jay. You did a great job as always. Really appreciate the panel members who do volunteer their time. Great discussions. It's an opportunity for us to learn from each other. And this is a catalyst for connection. So if someone said something that sparked your interest and you want to connect with them one-on-one, reach out to me and we can make that connection happen for you. The next event is set for Tuesday, December 10th, 2024. I did put a link in the chat to register for that. Again, thank you to the panel members. Appreciate all the attendees today. And with this, we'll have a great afternoon. Thank you for being here.